She wasn't just a judge on TV, she was the judge of America. For over 2 decades, Judge Judy didn't just dominate daytime television, she owned it. With her razor-sharp wit and ironclad sense of justice, Judith Sheindlin built an empire that made her richer than CEOs and more feared than real courtroom judges. But behind the fame, fortune, and the gavel that made her a legend, lies a side of Judge Judy the world rarely sees, and it's far more shocking than anyone imagined. At 82, the woman who once ruled television with her voice now lives in silence so heavy it almost speaks for her. The same piercing glare that once silenced millions can no longer hide the loneliness echoing through her empty mansions. Judge Judy's iron will built an empire, but it also burned bridges she could never rebuild. The choices she made in her relentless pursuit of power came at a cost no amount of fortune could erase. So what really happened to the woman who once had America hanging on her every word? Why does her life today feel like a haunting shadow of the success story we all believed? The truth behind Judith Susan Bloom's rise from a Brooklyn girl in 1942 to the highest-paid woman on television is darker, lonelier, and more heartbreaking than anyone ever imagined. She was the daughter of a kind-hearted dentist she adored and a sharp, no-nonsense mother who believed that talk was cheap and only actions revealed a person's truth. That lesson became Judy's moral compass, and the fire that would drive her for the rest of her life. Long before the fame, the fortune, or the millions who tuned in to watch her command a courtroom, Judith Sheindlin was just another young woman fighting to be heard in a world that didn't think women belonged in law. After passing the New York bar in 1965, she landed what many would call a dream job, a corporate lawyer at a major cosmetics firm. At just 23, she was ambitious, sharp, and determined to make her mark. But behind her confident smile, she felt the weight of dissatisfaction. The work was hollow, the days monotonous, and every morning she woke up knowing she was meant for something far greater. Within 2 years, she made a decision that stunned everyone around her: she walked away. Trading her briefcase for motherhood, Judy stayed home to raise her 2 children, Jamie and Adam. For 5 long years, she tried to convince herself that this was fulfillment, that this was enough. But the fire inside her refused to die. Restlessness crept in, whispering that her purpose still waited beyond the walls of her home. And when a friend mentioned an opening for a prosecutor in New York's family court in 1972, Judy didn't hesitate for a second. She seized the chance, and in that moment, the real Judge Judy was born. She leaped back into the fray. This time, everything fell into place. Family court was raw, emotional, and unforgiving. Cases of abuse, neglect, and custody disputes, the type of work that shattered most individuals. Yet, Judy flourished. She wasn't there to make acquaintances or sugarcoat the truth. Her mission was to slice through the deception and deliver swift, definitive justice. Her reputation skyrocketed. By 1982, New York Mayor Ed Koch recognized her contributions and appointed her as a criminal court judge. 4 years later, she received another promotion to supervising judge of Manhattan's family court. Her approach was unmistakable. Sharp, straightforward, and utterly unfiltered. Some labeled her as harsh, while others deemed her brilliant. However, there was one consensus. You did not lie to Judge Judy Sheindlin. Then came 1993, and everything shifted. A journalist from the Los Angeles Times penned an article about this dynamic judge in New York who was revolutionizing the system. The piece gained traction. Producers at 60 Minutes took notice and invited her to appear on the show. When America tuned into that segment, they were captivated. Here was a woman who didn't engage in games, didn't squander time, and didn't care about being liked. She was authentic in a manner television had never showcased before. In 1996, television producers approached her with a concept, a courtroom reality show featuring actual cases and real verdicts. On September 16 of that year, Judge Judy made its debut. Within weeks, it attracted millions of viewers. Within months, it became a cultural sensation. At its height, the show captivated 9 to 10 million viewers daily, occasionally surpassing Oprah in the ratings. Judy transformed from a judge into an icon. Her catchphrases, her piercing gaze, her entire persona became ingrained in American culture. The money was unlike anything television had ever seen. By 2005, Judge Judy was pulling in $25 million a year. 3 years later, that number nearly doubled, $45 million annually. And by 2017, she was earning a jaw-dropping $147 million, making her not just the highest-paid woman in television, but the highest-paid person on television, period. She worked only 52 days a year, meaning every day she stepped on set was worth nearly $900,000. It was power, prestige, and success at a level few could ever imagine. But behind the empire she built, the cracks were spreading. While Judy ruled the screen with absolute authority, her personal life was slipping out of control. The fame, the fortune, the adoration, none of it could fill the silence waiting at home. Success in the spotlight didn't bring peace, it brought distance. And the higher Judy climbed, the more she found herself standing alone. The warning signs had been there from the start. In 1964, right out of law school, she married Ronald Levy, a fellow attorney who seemed to share her ambition and drive. On paper, it was perfect. They had 2 children and the makings of a picture-perfect life. But behind closed doors, Judy faced a truth she couldn't ignore: Ronald never truly respected her career. He saw her brilliance as a threat, not a gift. And that quiet resentment would become the first fracture in the life of the woman who would one day be called Judge Judy. He saw her employment as a pastime, something she did to pass the time. In another era, that would have been acceptable, but not to Judy. She had put up too much of a fight for such a dismissal. 1 year after another, the animosity grew until the marriage ended in 1976. She was raising Jamie and Adam alone after 12 years of dating, all the while attempting to establish a legal career in a system that was set up to exclude women. She met defense lawyer Jerry Shindlin the following year, who had a bright mind and a demeanor that could match hers exactly. There was instant chemistry. They appeared to be a wonderful match when they got married in 1977. They were both hard. They both knew the law. Both flourished under duress. However, the appropriate type of stress can cause even the strongest bonds to sever. Judy's father passed away in 1990. She referred to Maury Blum as the greatest thing since the invention of the wheel. Her anchor, her hero. Judy fell apart when he died. In a manner he had never had to before, she wanted Jerry to step up and support her. Jerry, however, was unsure on how to provide for her needs. He was a man who thrived on organization and reason, yet sadness defies both of those principles. Judy, overwhelmed and frustrated, issued an ultimatum to him. The very following day, she filed for divorce from Jerry after he answered with a challenge rather than empathy. Everyone was startled by the divorce. The problem with Judy, though, is this. She acts with commitment in all she does. She means it if she files for divorce. She was mistaken this time, though. They both came to the realization that the divorce was a mistake within a year. They were missing one another. They were mutually dependent. They remarried in 1991. And it stuck this time. Since then, they have remained together, establishing a mixed family with Judy's 2 children and 3 from Jerry's prior marriage, Gregory, Jonathan, and Nicole. However, marriage did not make anything better. As Judge Judy's celebrity skyrocketed, she actually had a problem that fame couldn't solve. She never came home. She missed almost everything that mattered because of the never-ending filming schedule, the continual pressure to maintain her image, and the unrelenting pace of production. Birthdays, family dinners, school plays, these are the little things that make up a child's childhood. She would acknowledge years later that her biggest regret was not spending more time with her kids. No amount of achievement could relieve the weight of the shame she carried with her everywhere. According to one of her close friends, Judy was continually blaming herself, wondering if she had done enough, and knowing that she hadn't. Then, in 2011, an incident compelled her to face her own mortality. Judy abruptly began slurring her words during a live recording. She lost her expression. In an instant, the quick-witted, shrewd Lady America knew was gone. Production ceased. Paramedics arrived quickly. After being brought to the hospital, physicians gave her the diagnosis. She had experienced a brief ischemic attack that may have been far worse than a small stroke. Although she recovered swiftly, something was altered by the scare. To avoid having another stroke, she started exercising every day, making dietary changes, and starting to take medicine. She didn't slow down, though. She pushed harder, if anything, as though she was attempting to escape the fact that time was catching up with her. Her 5 children have grown up and started their own lives. Family get-togethers are uncommon. Years of being apart have created an emotional and physical gap between them that cannot be reversed. Even putting her granddaughter Sarah Rose to work as a law clerk for Judy Justice felt like an attempt to get back what she had lost. A means of leaving a legacy for someone who might genuinely remember her. However, the harm had already been done. The list of others who felt left behind, including the one individual who had supported her for more than 20 years, increased along with Judy's notoriety, as did the controversies that caused people to reevaluate everything they believed to be true about her. Judge Judy was untouchable for years. She was trusted by millions. She received a wealth from networks. Scandals that ruined other careers didn't appear to affect her. However, every kingdom has its weaknesses, and Judy's was going to be hard to ignore. Her own output was the source of the first serious blow. When former employees began to speak up, their descriptions were unsettling. They depicted an environment of fear, discrimination, and harassment at work. The show's long-standing executive producer, Randy Duth, was the target of a lot of the criticism. He was accused of acting inappropriately, verbally abusing others, and fostering an atmosphere where raising your voice could result in termination. After complaining, one producer, Courtney Bulick, filed a lawsuit, alleging she had been bullied and then fired. Her statement was supported by several former workers, who also mentioned a concerning trend that existed behind the scenes. Several even claimed that racial bias affected the cases that were broadcast, with guidelines to prevent scheduling too many black litigants in one program. These weren't merely murmurs. It was all put out in court filings and media reporting. What was Judy's level of knowledge, everyone asked. She strongly defended her team, maintained her support for Duth, and asserted that she was unaware of any wrongdoing. However, to detractors, her statement seemed insincere for someone who made a living on accountability. They contended that because she was the show's spokesperson, she was accountable for both what transpired behind the camera and what happened on it. And then there were the actual cases. One dispute, known simply as the herpes case, became notorious on the internet. Judy gave $5,000 to a woman who said she had been intentionally infected by her ex-boyfriend. The decision was made quickly and definitively, but there was a catch. Later, the individual produced medical records demonstrating that he had no herpes at all. The decision was incorrect. Disgracefully, publicly incorrect. The critics jumped in. They maintained that this was evidence of a wider pattern rather than a singular error. Judy made fast decisions based more on performance and emotion than on facts. It was a terrible revelation that posed an awkward question for a show that purported to provide true justice. How many other decisions had been as sloppy? As time went on, more viewers began to see previously unnoticed details. People without formal education, those who spoke broken English, and litigants who had trouble expressing themselves were frequently interrupted in the middle of sentences and ridiculed or discarded. What appeared to be fierce love suddenly appeared to be cruelty. Claims of classism erupted on social media. People said that Judy was especially unforgiving to defendants who were impoverished, receiving government aid, or anyone else she judged to be careless. The woman who professed to support justice was being accused of hitting people and degrading the weak for amusement. And Judy's style began to seem archaic, even disrespectful, in a time when discussions about systemic bias and injustice were unavoidable. Perhaps the most intimate dispute, however, concerned a person who had been there from the start. Hawkins, Petrie for more than 2 decades, Judy had relied on Byrd, or just Byrd. He was the steady voice that kept the courtroom orderly and the calm in her fury. His admirers adored him. He contributed to the enchantment. People were incensed when Judy launched Judy Justice in 2021 without Byrd present. Later on, he disclosed that he had never even been asked for his opinion on the new show. He was not invited to try out. No warning was offered to him. When he noticed someone else in his place, he discovered the same thing that everyone else did. Although he publicly wished Judy well, Byrd acknowledged that he was perplexed and devastated. Judy explained. To appeal to a new generation, the show needed a younger face. Instead, she hired Sarah Rose, her granddaughter, as a law clerk. This action simply served to strengthen allegations of nepotism. It was perceived as a betrayal by devoted admirers. Someone who had been faithful to her for decades had been thrown out by the woman who advocated loyalty. Then came the tumultuous breakup with CBS. 25 years later, in 2021, Judy expressed personal pride in a business move made by the network. CBS purchased the rights to broadcast reruns for $99 million rather than continue with new episodes. They also ignored Judy's other courtroom program, Hot Bench. It was disrespectful to Judy, not just business. She openly criticized them, claiming they had disregarded her creation and gambled poorly. And then there were the lawsuits, as if that wasn't enough. Judge Judy's previous sponsor, Rebel Entertainment Partners, filed a lawsuit against Judy and CBS over profit sharing. Particularly once spin-offs like Hot Bench were introduced covertly, they said they had been excluded from their fair share. Even though Judy was eventually proven not guilty, the accusations left a mark after the protracted court fights. She was even targeted by tabloids. False reports that she had strayed on her spouse and had Alzheimer's disease were published by the National Enquirer. Although they later expressed regret, the harm persisted. These controversies were terrible to someone who had spent decades managing her image. The public was observing every break as the untouchable judge suddenly became extremely touchable. Judy continued to work despite the mounting controversy. She continued to be visible, started new ventures, and refused to go away. Was anyone still interested, the question was? Judge Judy's 2021 finale marked the end of an era, not simply a television program. Judy has been a mainstay of daytime television for 25 years, appearing in millions of homes every day. But rather than give up, she took a risk. She made her debut in the streaming industry by launching Judy Justice on Amazon Freevee. The show featured Judy's trademark stare, actual cases, incisive rulings, and all the traditional components. However, something had changed. The audience was smaller, the platform was smaller, and the cultural influence simply wasn't the same without broadcast television's enormous reach. Judy Justice became the only TV judge to win for 2 different shows when she won another Daytime Emmy and achieved respectable ratings for a streaming show. However, the spark had vanished. The missing elements were a contributing factor. It felt different from the Judge Judy that people remembered sans Byrd and the recognizable CBS set. Despite her best efforts, Sarah Rose was unable to duplicate the connection that fans had adored for decades. Longtime viewers were alienated by the changes, and younger audiences didn't relate to her the way older generations did to Byrd. Judy started a new project in 2025 called Justice on Trial, which is a Prime Video documentary series. She wasn't overseeing small claims cases this time. She was revisiting old court cases, such as the Scopes monkey trial and the Menendez brothers. In contrast to what she had previously done, the format combined legal study with theatrical reenactments. In scripted scenes, Judy played a lower court judge in period-appropriate robes, with her tribunal justice team members acting as an appeals panel. It went unnoticed despite being ambitious, well-considered, and meant to provoke viewers' critical thinking about the legal system. Billboards, viral videos, and cultural discussions were all absent. Only a small portion of the audience that used to watch the show every day watched it when it was surreptitiously released on Prime Video. In actuality, Judy's influence has significantly decreased. She addressed tens of millions of people each week at her height. She is now fortunate to reach a few million viewers on streaming services. Her name is unknown to younger generations until their parents bring it up. They see her not as a trailblazer but as a meme. Her public appearances have also decreased in frequency. Even at 82, she still occasionally appears well-groomed. Although those times are rare, onlookers noticed she still had that commanding presence when Samuel L. Jackson introduced her at a recent event. The spotlight is no longer pursuing her, and she is no longer chasing it. The unpleasant truth is that Judy's time is over. She is still producing, working, and attempting to establish her relevance. However, the world has changed. Television has evolved. The audiences have evolved. Even Judy Shindlin, who is 82, is unable to stop time. This leads us to the most agonizing reality of all. Behind all those locked walls, this is how her life truly looks now. At 82 years old, Judith Shindlin has everything she once fought for. An internet well worth envisioned at $440 million. A couple of luxurious houses, a legacy cemented in television records, awards, accolades, and a stage of reputation the general public in no way contact. However, here's what cash cannot purchase. The time she lost, the relationships she neglected, and the quiet moments she will be able to never get lower back. She lives frequently in Florida now with Jerry, who remains her steadfast partner in any case these years. Their home is peaceful, non-public, the whole lot you'd expect for a person of her stature. However, those close to her describe an extraordinary reality. Behind the scenes, Judy offers with continual fatigue. She calls for ordinary clinical checkups to screen her fitness. A reminder that the mini-stroke she suffered over a decade in the past was just the beginning of her body's stressful gradual down. Nonetheless, she refuses to stop running. Even now, she's reviewing case documents, filming episodes of Judy Justice, and staying concerned in manufacturing decisions. It is as though she's afraid that the instant she stops, the entirety she constructed will disappear. Or maybe it's easier than that. Perhaps paintings is all she has left. Her 5 children, Jamie, Adam, Gregory, Jonathan, and Nicole, are all grown now. They've their personal careers, their personal households, their own lives that do not revolve around her. Own family gatherings are rare. Holidays experience emptier. The girl who once commanded a court with absolute authority now sits in mansions in which the silence is deafening. She attempts to fill the void with philanthropy. She's donated cash to academic packages, supplied scholarships for students who want a preventing risk, the equal risk she once fought for. She stated she wants younger humans to have possibilities she had to claw her way toward. It is meaningful paintings, however it does not erase the absence her personal children felt growing up. Sarah Rose, her granddaughter and contemporary law clerk on Judy Justice, once revealed something telling. She said that despite Judy's hard exterior, there's a deep sadness under, a remorse that handiest the ones closest to her can see. Judy blames herself for prioritizing paintings over family, for missing moments she can never reclaim. Even her dating with Jerry, robust as it is, cannot fill every hole. He's older now, too, spending a whole lot of his time away from the highlight, content to live quietly, while Judy maintains her relentless tempo. They're collectively, however, in many approaches, they're additionally on my own in their separate worlds. At 82, Judy Shindlin is a dwelling paradox. She proved that a female ought to dominate a male-driven enterprise. She shattered boundaries, built wealth beyond imagination, and have become an image of no-nonsense justice. But she also proved something else. That achievement, measured best in cash and reputation, leaves you with mansions complete of reminiscences you never made and relationships you cannot rebuild.